So one of the reasons that I chose Rocket League, one, it's a very digestible game, so you can watch it and you kind of understand it immediately. But the second reason was I believe that at the collegiate level, it's kind of a pillar of collegiate esports.
Professional Rocket League started in 2016, I want to say, and it had about, I want to say 8 teams maybe.
So you have the Star League, you also have TESPA, and then you also have the College Carball. So those were the 3 that we kind of played in this semester. But just in terms of kind of the history of Rocket League, you've had a lot of college entities that have been around for a couple of years now, kind of since the dawn of collegiate esports, and Rocket League has kind of been one of those initial games. In terms of the college carball scene, they've been around for a couple of years. The collegiate Rocket League has been around for a couple of years. Now it's getting so popular and more schools want it. So in terms of popularity at the collegiate level, I know that it's kind of taken off, and so Collegiate Star League also offers Rocket League. All 3 of those leagues, you have to be at a certain rank, which is like, what, Diamond, I guess?
Probably the lowest, I would say, Diamond,
yeah.
To like actually make it through at least the first round or 2.
Yeah, and so just to be competitive in those 3 leagues, you kind of have to be at that level just to even really compete. So we played in all 3 this semester, and we were successful in some of them and not as successful in the other, and so it's just been a learning experience. I think for me, one of the first things that I noticed, just in terms of the talent level, is there's just a pretty severe gap in terms of just being able to hop on and just play Rocket League, because the physics of the game are just so...
It takes, like, I would say, like thousands of hours to get to like really learn the mechanics and the physics of the ball going everywhere and stuff.
And if people are unaware, you're at a competitive disadvantage if you're using mouse and keyboard, in my opinion. So yeah. A lot of all our players use controllers, and so I've just noticed that if you haven't put in those hours, and a lot of the times you're not even necessarily playing matches, you have different map packs in which you take your vehicle and you can fly around, and people have actually made levels and things like that.
Obstacle courses and stuff.
Yeah, just so you can actually figure out how to control and maneuver your car in the air, which is such a key part of the game. If I'm centering a ball to Alex or things like that, if the ball is up and I have to go in and somehow hit it into the goal, then it's just incredibly noticeable that if I'm just picking up the game for the first time, it seems so easy.
It looks like it.
It does, if you're just watching it and, you know, I'm just boosting around the map. But at the end of the day, I know it's incredibly difficult when I can barely get my car in the air and move it around. So, I mean...
I started on keyboard and mouse, actually, and for about maybe 150 hours, and I was pretty bad. And then I switched to controller, and it was just a completely different experience for me, personally. But I know some pros do play on keyboard and mouse, and they're godlike. So it's just personal preference, pretty much. Decision making, I would say, probably. Decision making and car mechanics, because you got to know where you need to position yourself on the field compared to everybody else and your teammates to make it as beneficial to your team as possible. I want to say the most recent RLCS, the Rocket League Championship Series last year was, I think it was $1 million prize pool, I believe.
I don't think there's much at the collegiate level. This one's definitely lower than Overwatch or League of Legends, but yeah, just in terms of popularity, I would say, especially at the collegiate level, I'd say it would rival on popularity, just because there were hundreds of schools that signed up for the collegiate Rocket League. There are hundreds of schools that signed up for the collegiate Carball, and there were hundreds of schools that signed up for the collegiate Star League. So there are 3 different leagues in which you find, 300 to 400 to 500 schools that are a part of it at, varying different, levels. But the scholarshiping might not be as much, but the popularity is there.
And I can see that growing potentially, probably, because the game is still growing and gaining traction as well.
Definitely. Akron Zips.
Akron Zips is one of them, definitely.
Yeah.
They won the past 2 invites to Carball.
Yeah.
What else?
They were successful in the CRL. Saints Gaming.
Yeah, Saints Gaming is another big one with Luchino.
Yeah.
Luchino, I would say. He started in SARP BC's Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Battle Cars, 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 which was the first iteration of Rocket League. That was the first title that Psyonix made in this genre, and he started with that with all the other now pros in Rocket League, and he just moved up from SARP BC to Rocket League, and he was relatively young, and now he's in college playing on a college team in Rocket League. That was probably the best team we've played so far.
Ohio State, Indiana was good. The two most that come to mind immediately, it's the University of Akron and Saints Gaming. Those were the two that you knew if you played against them, it'd be tough.
That's
We're in a good spot. We're in a good spot.
Yeah, next semester.
Next semester.
We're in a good spot next semester.
So one of the reasons that I chose Rocket League, one, it's a very digestible game, so you can watch it and you kind of understand it immediately. But the second reason was I believe that at the collegiate level, it's kind of a pillar of collegiate esports. So just in terms of the amount of student involvement and the structure that has been provided by these different organizations for students to compete. So when parents and students and teachers and whomever asks me all the time, Tyler, why aren't we playing this game? Why aren't we doing Battle Royale? Why aren't we doing Fortnite and all these other games? And we're kind of like, look, the structure doesn't necessarily, exist for those entities right now. And so, I can look to Rocket League and say, I know there are 3 to 4 different organizations that will provide opportunity for my students to compete on a regular basis. And so, no, even though Rocket League doesn't necessarily have all of the Twitch viewers and numbers that League of Legends does or Overwatch does, I believe the student interest is there. And to me, that's one of the most important things because that's a key factor in terms of just figuring out, okay, is Rocket League going to be around in the next 4 or 5 years? Do I want to build a scene around Rocket League and then the game just kind of goes away? There's too much student interest, in my opinion, for Rocket League to go anywhere anytime soon. If you're looking to start, or where should you start? I always say go back to the website and try and figure out if there is a club or a varsity team that exists on campus and figure out if there is a point of contact. And that's kind of where you get your foot in the door, and then that individual will either say, we have a club team, we have a varsity team, here's our website, we have tryouts coming up soon. One, get into said school, so you gotta be a full-time student. And then after that, you need to figure out what currently exists on campus. So ask around, ask teachers, ask students, ask whomever that you can find. Typically you'll find that housed on the university website, whatever university that may be. And then leave your information, send an email, make a phone call, do what you gotta do. So that's my opinion. I think in terms of growth, team play.
Yeah, I mean, big thing is rank and how you mesh with other teammates, I guess.
True.
And
our Rocket League team is mad chill. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and click on the link below.